Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee of May 13th, 2022. The first item of business is a roll call. And so I will start with members of this committee. Jessica Walls-Lavelle.
I am here.
Okay, Stephanie Turman.
Here.
Okay, and other board members, please identify yourselves by name.
Austin Davis.
Jeff Lightman.
Lori Miskowski.
Jen Liptak. Oh, and Jen
Michelle.
Liptak.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next agenda item is approval of minutes of the April 21st meeting. Anybody have any questions, comments, or revisions of the meeting minutes? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. All right, our agenda item for today, our business anyway, are a review of the June service changes. David.
Good morning. Thank you, Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee. I am happy to be here. I'm David Huffaker, the Chief Development Officer. And before Philip St. Pierre and Ellie Newman go into some of the details about the June service change, I did want to provide just a little bit of context setting for where we are. Catherine talked about this a little bit last month, but I do want to address some of the schedules and staffing challenges that we've had over the past several months. These are an ongoing challenge for the Port Authority, and it's not something that we can't overcome, and we're going to do that. The situation here in Allegheny County is not unique. Transit agencies nationally are struggling to hire enough operators to meet posted schedules. This has been our experience through the duration of the pandemic, and it's made it exceedingly difficult to reach a level of operation staff that provides a reliable experience each day for our riders. Many factors have played a part in the ongoing challenges, including our requirements for operators to be vaccinated and a wave of retirements that hit us about the time that COVID reached the United States. Earlier in the pandemic, when ridership was significantly less, this impact was much more manageable. Today, however, as many workers are returning to the office after 2 years, gasoline prices are high, and we're starting to see much more activity downtown. We are seeing ridership increasing, demand growing, and the strain on our operations force has been too great on some days. This is not acceptable, and it's our job to find ways to recruit, hire, and train operators and employees to support the transit system. We've tackled that challenge and continue to promote our employment opportunities at every turn. We're starting to see results from those efforts. We're currently training new operators and hiring more, and we have new operator classes starting every 5 weeks. In our June service change that you'll hear about, we are taking steps to improve the reliability of our schedules. We will adjust some of our scheduled trips to temporarily improve overall reliability. This does not mean we're cutting service permanently, and we are not eliminating any jobs. It's a temporary step to make sure that our schedules, which is our contract with the riders, are reliable for them when they leave for work or school or to a doctor's appointment. It's the right step for us to take as we fight through and out of this pandemic. The bottom line is that this pandemic has been tough on all of us, and knowing what is ahead has been impossible. I'll also note that our scheduling and staffing issues are not the fault of our operators. Most of our operators and maintenance staff have worked through the pandemic, many taking extra overtime to fill in gaps in schedules and shifts, and have abided by our directives to wear masks and get vaccines. Like our transit partners across the country and many other industries facing hiring challenges right now, we will find a way. We'll figure this out so that we can deliver the transit service that you expect and deserve. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Philip for some details about the June service change.
Excuse me a second. John Teggs joined the call. I don't know what the issue was, but I'm on the call now.
Hi, John. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, David. Good morning, committee members. I am Philip St. Pierre. I'm the Director of Transit Scheduling here at Port Authority. And as David said, I'm going to give a brief overview of the June 26, 2022 service changes. Our goal with these changes was to improve our service reliability for our customers. And so by doing that, we did have to reduce some service hours. In total, it's about a 4% reduction in weekly service hours. So that enables us to put more of our available workforce onto what we call an extra board. These are the operators that cover such absences, planned absences, such as vacations, holidays, and things of that nature, but also unplanned absences, such as when operators do call in sick. Next slide, please. So the increased extra board coverage, our goal was to reach of about an 18% extra board based on our scheduled assignments. Our projected extra board size with this June service change is roughly going to be around a 16%. So we're a little bit short of that 18% goal. But it's certainly going to be a lot more than what we are currently experiencing over the last couple months. So currently for our extra board size for the April service change is roughly around 12% right now, which is resulting in some out of service hours. Our capability to cover those weekly assignments has dropped to as low as about 6% based on our available manpower over the last couple months. And you can see on the chart here, it's a little difficult to see, but about 14% was our maximum weekly out of service hours sometime in late March there. So our goal, we're projecting that with this June service change that we should be very close to being able to cover all scheduled work, possibly up to 2%, maybe out of service, but that's certainly going to be better than what we've been experiencing over the last couple months. This is all right, next slide. I got the clicker. All right, sounds good. This is an example. Now, this chart's going to be a little difficult to read from the monitors, but this is an example of some of the changes that we made. In this example, this is specific to the Collier division. Some routes do have frequency improvements. Not every route was reduced in frequency. So we went through and evaluated route by route, seeing where we can improve frequency based, if there's some ridership improvements that have been experienced over that route. We try to look and see, hey, can we improve the frequency for that particular route? Or has the ridership not bounced back as things have been returning to normal? And so some of the routes have been reduced in frequency, some have been improved. We also factored in the equity rankings, and Ellie Newman's going to give a little bit more of a context of from her perspective on the equity rankings. But not every single route has been reduced, some have been improved. So that's something that I want to stress. Now, I'm not going to go through every single route line by line, but for our public, today, our summary of service changes is going to be posted on our website, so the public will be able to go and view a summary of their specific routes that they want to look at. That can be found at our website at portauthority.org/service updates, and can be found from the schedules tab on our main page, quarterly updates. So that's going to be readily available today. We'll also have the paper timetables available to be viewed from the website. So they can see the individual trips and everything about what they may experience for their specific route. In total, 61 routes have changed. That's nearly 2/3 of our routes have some type of change. So it is a significant portion. So, and like I said, some have improved in frequency and some have been reduced in frequency. We do have a few routing changes to discuss for today. The Route 29 has a change. This is due to a culvert that we are not able to operate over on Mahoney Road. So on Mahoney Road, we're currently doing a detour that extends approximately 15 to 20 minutes in each direction, and so that's really impacting our performance on the Route 29. So we evaluated the ridership in this area, and what we've determined is that we're going to utilize Enlow Road to transition between Cliff Mine Road and Steubenville Pike. And that's going to be able to enable us to get to two schools in the area that are on this route, which is CCAC West and Pittsburgh Technical College in that area in a more efficient and effective manner. Route 38. The Route 38 routing has 3 different variants on that route, and it is a kind of a complex schedule, even for our public. One of the variants is called the C variant, and the C variant operates, has just one little area that provides coverage in a neighborhood. It's between Swallow Hill Road and Orchard Springs. What we've determined is that the ridership has not returned to sustainable levels just in that little portion of the route. So to make it more effective, we are going to convert those. There's 3 trips in the morning, 3 trips in the afternoon that operate the C variant. And we're going to convert those trips to what we call the G variant that goes out to Green Tree. So there's going to be 2 main variants on the 38. It's going to be the G variant that operates out to Green Tree, and the M variant that operates to Mount Lebanon Station. The 61A is currently on a 61A and B are currently on long-term detours due to the Fern Hollow Bridge situation. Due to the length of that detour, we're going to formalize that detour into our service change. This is going to enable our passengers to see where the buses are along the routes. So typically when we have long-term detours like this, we want to try to get it into our service change so that the real-time passenger information is updated, and the customers will be able to see the buses along that route. So we are going to be formalizing those detours while that construction is being till that construction is complete to replace the bridge. So that's the 61A and B. We also have another construction project that is slated to be completed in July, and that's impacting 3 routes, the Route 55, the 56, and the 59. Currently, it's down to 1 single lane over the Jerome Street Bridge, and we're unable to operate westbound over the Jerome Street Bridge. We have a very lengthy detour in place. We're going to take that out of, we had it built due to the length of the detour, we had it built into our service changes, and we're pulling that out in advance of that completion in July of 2022. So we're going to put the routes on detour until they are, till those we're able to operate on the Jerome Street Bridge in both directions. Also, the Route 69 is going to be extended out to Forbes Hospital. We've evaluated our layover situation. We came to this committee last month and talked about establishing a layover at Haymaker Village near Trafford. We've talked to our operations and some of the circulations that they're are having some difficulty circulating that parking lot out there at Haymaker Village. So we've talked to our operations, and what we've determined is it's best to extend out to Forbes Hospital. Forbes Hospital, about maybe a year and a half ago, built a nice layover location to utilize for one of our other routes, the P68. It actually, they built it large enough that we can accommodate 2 buses there. So we're actually going to use that layover location for both the Route 69 and the P68. And I think it'll be very beneficial for the community to have some more access to a medical facility out there. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ellie Newman to provide a little bit more context of the Title VI and equity analysis of the service change.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone. My name is Ellie Newman. I'm the Section Manager of Service Development here at Port Authority, and I'm going to be delving into some of the decision-making process that we went upon to make these determinations for the 4% service reduction that Philip explained. So what we think about when we have to reduce service is we try to make the smallest amount of reductions possible and really think carefully about how we're impacting people. So we had a process where we looked at the various metrics with each route. We looked at the equitability. We looked at the transit reliance of each community that the route serves. We looked at the geographic uniqueness of each route to see if we reduce service on one route, would people have a secondary option that they would be able to take or not. So we had a very data-driven and thoughtful process for this. And then on the flip side, not only did we think about the equity and the data side of it, but our resource management side of it with scheduling as well. So sometimes when you're making major changes to so many different schedules, it kind of freed up some efficiencies where we were able to put back service on other routes, as Philip mentioned. So it was kind of a dance between figuring out where we could make the most impact with the least negative impacts on our riders. We also found that we weren't necessarily planning for this, but we were able to increase service by over 30% on 5 routes. So I'll go into that at the end, but this will require a Title VI analysis, which I'll delve into later on. So this chart kind of explains how we sort of divided up these changes by route type and by equity score of the route. So our routes are divided into 4 categories. There's coverage routes, which are sort of lifeline routes that don't run very often. They may have kind of a windy service pattern, but they kind of collect people from various places where they live and take them to transfer points or important places around the county. We have local routes, which are kind of the bread and butter of the system. And then we have commuter and rapid routes, which run and mostly serve peak hour commuters and provide a more limited service pattern. So overall, we found with our ridership that there were major differences in how much ridership has recovered from pre-pandemic. So for coverage routes, in high and medium equity areas, we only have 40% fewer riders now than we did pre-pandemic. It's slightly more for the low equity routes. For local routes, the high and medium equity areas are running at only 1/3 below where we were pre-pandemic. And then the commute routes is where we've seen kind of the least slowest return from pre-pandemic ridership. So in some cases, with the low equity routes, we're still 65% below where we were pre-pandemic with ridership. So that really informed where we ended up making these service reductions, where we had to make them. So as you can see from this chart, our coverage area high and medium equity routes actually increased overall. So we were able to put a 2.2% increase in service hours on those routes and basically made no changes to low equity coverage. For locals, we did make a slightly larger reduction. So it was a -3% for the high and medium equity areas and almost 5% for the lower equity locals. And then the commuters had the largest reduction just because we just haven't seen that ridership come back. And we also know from our own analysis that many riders on the commute routes also have a local route that they could take instead. So it's not as big of a deal if your route only comes every 20 minutes instead of every 10 or something like that. For weekend changes, this was a little bit smaller. We pretty much kept locals and coverage the same and kind of adjusted things here and there. We did make some larger changes for the commute and rapids on Saturday and Sunday. That's mostly due to light rail reductions where we were just spacing trips about 5 to 10 minutes further apart. So still providing fairly frequent service on weekends, but just not quite as good as it used to be. So the major service changes, again, these were things that we weren't really going into this expecting to find, but just in the process of combing through every single schedule, trying to figure out how to do this as equitably as possible, we were able to find 5 areas where we could increase service by over 30% without really increasing our workforce requirements. So these changes were Route 22 weekday and Saturday has over a 30% increase in service. Route 40 Mount Washington weekday, Route 44 Saturday, Route 57 Saturday and Sunday, and Route 81 Sunday only. So these are all going to be put in as temporary changes pending a Title VI analysis. But since we expect the results will be very positive, hopefully we'll be able to make this a permanent change. So we plan to bring that to the board, do that analysis over the summer, and then bring that analysis to the board. So that wraps up my comments. Does anyone have any questions?
It's John Tagg. Just a clarification on equity. When you're talking about equity, were you talking about just Title VI, or because we obviously have different categories of equity? And so are we just talking about Title VI, or are we talking about the broader term that we use for equity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're using the broader definition of equity for this. So our equity index looks at 8 different demographic variables. So we look at things like percentage of people in poverty, percentages of households without a vehicle, percentage of population that does not speak English as a primary language. So we have these different variables. We average them all together. And then each route gets an equity score. So it's a little bit more comprehensive than Title VI, which only looks at minority race and low income. And then that score determines basically anything that scores highly on equity. We're trying as much as possible to not reduce service on those routes.
Thank you. Are there any questions of committee members?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So we're increasing the number of operators on the extra board, and I just can't remember, are all the folks on the extra board, are they trained as part of their orientation on all these routes? They're going to be fine to go out there and just, they're not going to know what they get on a daily basis, but they're prepared to operate whatever they're given, right?
Yes, our operations staff, for when an operator is assigned or picks the extra board or gets assigned to the extra board, they're trained on all the routes and do route familiarization for that. So they are familiar and they're capable. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions of Philip or David or Ellie from committee members? What about board members? Any board members have any questions? Any stakeholders in the audience that have any, or on the teams have any questions of either Philip, David, or Ellie? Okay, seeing no questions. I think that's the only item on the agenda, correct? Or is there something else I missed?
No, that's it.
Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Okay, meeting adjourned. I guess you're up next, Ann.
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry, I was late for the meeting.
Okay.
Don't let it happen again, John.
Thanks. No pressure, Jeff.
All right, we're just going to hold off a minute or two, get switched over for the finance committee, and oh, are we ready? Okay.
We're ready, Madam Chair.
All right, well then we're ready. So we'll go ahead and call to order the finance committee meeting of May 19th, 2022. My first item before we do other agenda items is to take a roll call, starting with members of this committee. Board member Liptak.
Here.
Representative Davis.
Here.
Board member DeLon.
Here.
And for other board members that are present, please identify yourselves.
Stephanie Terman.
Jeff Litman.
Lori Mizgorski.
John Tagg.
Okay, thank you. And our first item is approval of minutes of the April 21st Finance Committee meeting. Do I have any corrections or comments? Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
I think I heard a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Okay, our primary agenda item for this morning is the preliminary fiscal year 2023 operating and capital budgets. Pete or Catherine?
Pete looks different. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, staff. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I will be doing an introduction for our fiscal 23 budget, a little different than what we've normally done. Usually we come and we say, here's the budget, here's what's going to happen. But things are different these days, aren't they? So we would like to have the conversation more focused on what do we know is going on? What do we think is going on? How is that pushing our strategic plan and our strategy for investing in Allegheny County? And then address the budget as, here's how we're going to pay for the things we've talked about. So this morning, we'll walk through a little bit about the lay of the land, see how our world is looking, and then I'll turn it over to Pete for the rest of the budget presentation. So just again, a brief review of some of the things that we'll be looking at. And Cheryl, am I clicking?
Yes.
Aha, thank you so much. So a few things to talk about. Ridership trends. It's not just the folks commuting, it's the folks who previously were taking transit to grocery shop 4 times a week and now get one good delivery. Folks who were going to several doctor's appointments who are now doing telemedicine. Folks who maybe went to movies who now have Netflix and whatever it is that you're going to do with your Netflix. The way that we all use transportation is different. Whether you are primarily a transit user or you are someone who walks or bikes, we're interacting with our networks differently. So this is driving changes on our ridership base. You can see here some of the discussion of ridership over the past couple of years for us. Points I'd like to stress is when we go to community meetings, we still hear people say, you moved my bus in 2010 and I want it back. Sometimes we hear you moved my bus in 2007. So what we're looking at here is not that people aren't riding, it's that the network that we've changed over the past 10 to 15 years isn't necessarily where they want to go today. And how do we match that up? At the same time, if fewer people are riding, we're getting less money in at the fare box. We did a fare change here, and board, thank you for your support, back on January 1st. Changed our net fares. The average passenger saved about 1 cent or 2 cents per trip. It made it easier for folks to use the system, which is obviously the goal, remove the barriers, right? Our individual fare is still one of the highest in the country, but we're trying to true up the rest of these investments. And so this is what we're seeing on our revenues coming back in from the fare box. Now, I want to stress, this is not the only way that passengers pay. Everyone who's on this vehicle has paid a tax or an investment back into this service in some way, shape, or form. You might not own your house, but your rent is paying ad valorem. You are purchasing things or state sales tax. You are contributing back into the economy. So it's changing the way that people are paying, and it's shifted away from that fare box. So anchoring us into a bigger trend, we are not alone. We, as an entity that had a lot of discretionary work trips, we've seen a bigger hit than if we were primarily built around folks who were using us not just because we were good, but because they did not have access to other trips or because their employment was less flexible and allowing them to be able to work from home. So those are things which are driving these trends across the country. And that's the reality that we have. Yeah, you heard a brief discussion just a minute ago, and for folks who are just now tuning in, transit, like many other industries, is looking at a hiring issue. Banksville Road, there's a sign that says hiring nowadays, who isn't? We are not unique in this. Port Authority has been very fortunate to be ahead of our peers nationally, and that when our friends in other cities were doing 10 to 12% emergency service reductions, we had the ability to run through overtime and the extra board, which our scheduling and planning staff just discussed. But it's coming for everybody. It's very difficult to retain folks for transit. These are difficult jobs. If you're on the extra board, you don't know what you're doing every day. You might be in work at 4 in the morning. You might stay until 2 in the morning. You might work on weekends. You might work on all your holidays. And this is not unique to our transit operators. Our transit police have the same issues going on with how difficult the job is, and our folks in IBEW. So we have implemented an aggressive hiring campaign. We're working with our elected officials to stress that we will train somebody for a CDL. This is a great job to walk into, and we will help you get through that. And you see what we're seeing around our national trends with our friends in transit. So that's what we know about service, and that's what we know about manpower. But what do people really think about Port Authority service, and what are we hearing back from employers? So our marketing staff, in conjunction with campus, has recently conducted a survey both of Port Authority riders, and we also have information coming back from our major employers. So what did we hear from our passengers? Half the folks that we contacted were lapsed riders, so we hope to see them back again, and they were working remote. And I want to stress, one of the reasons we could do this is we had their Connect card data. It's often very difficult to find the consumer who has left your service. So we reached out to these folks to see what their perceptions were. We did hear from a certain number of folks that they were concerned about getting COVID from service. Let me stress here again that there's not a single reported case of somebody getting COVID from a bus operator or a bus passenger. The interaction that you need, that 20 minutes of sitting and talking, is just not something folks normally do when they're on transit, but there was still that perception for some folks. But it was something like 28% listed this as a secondary concern. Less than 20% of former riders listed this as a serious concern. And we also found out that folks were willing to come back to service if the way that they traveled would change. We spoke also with employers to see what was going on with their schedules and to try to have an understanding of what people thought about this whole return to the office. Most of the employers we spoke to were using a hybrid remote workforce, so folks being in the office a few days a week and then working remotely the other days. Didn't hear as many people saying they were going to change in 22. What they're doing now is what they were rolling forward. We did not hear from a lot of employers that they were going to compel folks to come back to on-site work. Not just that, you might have a lease that you want to fill in, but if you're requiring people to come back and they leave you to find other employment, what have you really done for that employment base? So what does this mean for Port Authority? We see shifts in ridership. We know that the market that we previously served for a lot of employment downtown and throughout the county has changed. So what have we done? I will not repeat what our friends in the planning group just discussed, but from the beginning, we were flexible in our service. We moved service from where folks were not riding it, and we tried to target back to where they needed it. I stress needed it because, as you will recall, in the first year of the pandemic, we observed capacity constraints. We did not fill up our buses. We had half of a seated load on buses and trains. And in some of our neighborhoods, this was a hardship. Buses would fill up in the first 15% of a trip. You could not get there from here. So we moved buses around. Of the slightly over 600 buses we run during rush hour, that number didn't change. We just put these in different locations. You just saw these maps, so I'm not going to walk back through them. And then you also see where has the ridership actually moved? Where have we seen more folks come out for service and where have we seen folks move away? Again, the planning team just walked through these. So what does that show? Oh, so we have seen our service move and we've moved our service and demand. Let's also talk about the safety issues that we have addressed. So we have air filtration devices on all of our buses and we're working on getting them on all of the trains. So we exceed the CDC standards for air circulation. Who would have thought that some of the places to have the cleanest airs would be on your Port Authority bus? But there we go. And thank you to our maintenance team. We have been doing and we've continued the nightly cleans on the buses. We're phasing that back as we've gotten more of these air filtration units out there because we know now COVID is airborne. It's much less likely that you touch it and you get COVID, but it's the air quality we need to look at. There's been a lot of discussion about our vaccine mandate throughout this year. What does that mean for us? First, it means that our operators are more likely to be at work because now that everyone is vaccinated, they are statistically less likely to get sick, less likely to be hospitalized, much less likely to die. Of course, that's a major concern for making sure everyone is safe. This also means our operators are able to make the line. And as our scheduling folks were discussing, when we have this lean extra board, it's more critical to make sure that our folks can actually be here to get their work done. So we're keeping you safe. We are still encouraging the use of masks on vehicles, and the vehicles I passed this morning, the majority of our operators are still wearing the masks. We've moved service around, but the world is changing. So how do we continue to address how the world is changing? So last year the board adopted, I should say, our first long range plan, Next Transit. And so what does that mean for the agency? And if we're going to get to this vision, this $4.8 billion investment, how do we get there? So our strategic plan is guiding the next 3 to 5 years of what we're looking at doing to get to this better future for the region, not just in service, but in terms of customer service, in terms of small business participation, all the ways that we interact with our communities. So we have a bunch of initiatives in the budget that tie in through this strategic plan, which is going to track how we deliver. Let's talk about a few of them. Rebranding. everybody in this room has heard me wax poetic about when someone is new to Pittsburgh and I need to give directions. I can't say go to the corner and look for the bus. It looks like blah. I can't get them directed to that bus. Our signage is sort of a compilation of the last 30 years of work. There is a lot of disconnect on being able to say, this is how you get transit around Pittsburgh, and this is the easiest way to identify it. Also, part and parcel of this is people have different expectations of an agency post-COVID. So this is the time to go forward with unifying the brand, making it easier to observe, making it easier to use, and pushing out that customer service focus to our customers, but then also that investment to our staff to deliver that is critical as we move on past COVID. We are hosting, we've been selected to host several national conferences next year. Why is this a big deal? It means that Pittsburgh is seen as a major player in this space of evolving transit. We will be hosting the American Public Transportation Association's National Rail Conference next year. We last came to town in 2022. And we're going to be focusing on this is how you keep a 100-year-old rail system running, because that is the future that we live in. We have the next transit initiatives, always focusing on safety and our new safety plan initiatives. We will be at the table on at least 2 of our 3 bargaining units. And again, a big discussion in service reliability. That contract is your schedule. If you don't know that you're going to get that trip made, we have broken that contract. So really focusing on having the quality service and the resources that you know you're going to be able to get there when we promised you that trip. We have other construction projects that are packed into our budget, continuing our BRT downtown to Oakland. So you'll see us breaking ground in the next year on our downtown service loop, moving further out through Uptown and Oakland. Longer term projects. Wow, have we ever done a bus network redesign? Chris Sandvik. When's the last time? When's the last time we did that? 15 years. My goodness. I didn't even have kids. All right, get ready, my friend. So time to match up where service is going to what people actually want to take. Are you going to that grocery store because you like it or because it's the one that's most convenient on your bus route? And how do we deliver a better service? How are people paying for transit financing around the country? What are our best practices? So just a couple of other things. I'm really excited about the river to river corridor. This emerged from our next transit project. If we had not done this during the pandemic, this would not have come up as our top consideration. People feel differently about transit making their lives possible and improving their community. So I'm excited to see where that goes. And now I'm going to give it to Pete Shank. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Catherine. My name is Peter Shank, Controller for the Port Authority. And before I get into the rest of the slides, I just did want to take a moment. This is really a 5-month team project, so I did want to thank all senior staff, directors within the Port Authority, managers, and specifically Donnie Hamilton Jr., Tia Gunn within the financial planning, Sean Tregeser, Rebecca Kosher, and Dave McCarthy and Ed Typansky, who have been instrumental in meeting over the past 5 months with the different divisions and directors and compiling both the operating and the capital budget as preliminary budget as presented here. So the operating budget, the preliminary is currently at $519.66 million, which is a 5.3% increase over the 2022 operating budget, and the capital budget is currently set at $215.2 million, which is a 5.9% decrease over fiscal 22. We'll delve into the operating budget and we'll just look at some of the high-level impact areas, and it's no surprise, as I've reported over the past couple of years, that our passenger revenues are down during the COVID pandemic. The good news is that they're up around 50% over fiscal 21 levels from both a ridership and a revenue perspective. And so we're projecting a 15% growth rate in the fiscal 23 operating budget based on some information from service planning and projections as where we see ridership going in fiscal 23. There's also some anecdotal evidence of some major employers in the next couple of months changing some of their work patterns. So we feel confident in that 15% growth rate for fiscal 23. Passenger revenues, as I mentioned, they are down significantly from pre-pandemic levels, but there is the silver lining that they are increased in the past fiscal year by about 50%. Stimulus, the Port Authority qualified for over $500 million in stimulus dollars, and that's twofold. Some of it's Port Authority, and then we also did receive some additional CARES funding from Allegheny County, and we have approximately $322 million of federal stimulus funding remaining. 127 million has been used from the CARES funding, and this fiscal year we switched over to ARPA funding since there is a time limit to those dollars. So we've billed or invoiced 34.7 million from ARPA. What have we spent that money on? We've used it on things like PPE. We've installed the air filtration systems, driver shields into the revenue vehicles. We've used it to pay for overtime for sanitization of vehicles and also facilities. We've used it for paid time off in the in the event that somebody did contract COVID and was not able to come to work. We've also used some of it to pay for time off when you went to get vaccinated. So as in prior years, our largest benefactor in the operating budget is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and next year it will be $270.2 million. And you can see on the right portion of that pie chart, the federal stimulus dollars that would be earmarked for next year is currently set at $96.4 million. Would be the federal stimulus that balances the fiscal 23 budget. In addition, Allegheny County providing $37.5 million, and the regional asset district another $3 million. For fiscal 23, we have been notified formally that we will be getting a rather significant increase in our state operating assistance dollars for fiscal 23, almost an 8% year-over-year increase, which, as you can see, going back to fiscal 17 is really encouraging in terms of state operating assistance dollars supporting the operating budget. In terms of, we are legally required to have a structurally balanced operating budget. So the current budget for 23 would be balanced at $519.662 million. The fiscal 22 was balanced at $493.691 million. Some of the assumptions that are being used to balance this current budget, and I should mention there is still a lot of volatility out there. Just in the past couple of weeks, diesel fuel on a daily basis has jumped around from $4.70 per gallon. Last week it was over $5 a gallon, and I'll get into that in the monthly report. But we even so there's a lot of volatility there. Obviously, if anybody follows the financial markets, the past couple of months, there's been a lot of volatility in the financial markets, which ultimately ends up impacting the pension plans. But so there could be some small adjustments between now and even the June presentation to the board. But some of the items used in this for an assumption basis is we have historical rate increases for ATU and the IBEW personnel, which their contracts are due to expire. We have a year 3 of our market adjustments for our non-union salaries, and we also have a 3% merit pool, and we have a 1% performance pool for non-union salaried employees. Healthcare, we are working collaboratively with our friends at ATU 85 on labor management committee meeting, and so we are getting outside bids for healthcare from our 2 primary providers, Hbac and UPMC, and we're getting best and final offers and working along with ATU 85 on trying to solidify new rates that would go into effect January of 2023. From a employment perspective, we are currently at additional 47 positions from fiscal 22 and 23, which is on the right side of this chart. If you look at the left side, these are snapshots of March employment figures going back to 2018. So fortunately, in some cases, we've not approached the budgetary, the full complement of budgetary positions, which has resulted in some savings and the ability to grow our operating reserves. As we've mentioned in some of the earlier presentations, we are actively trying to fill both operator and maintenance positions, which make up the majority of those vacancies and the differential you see between the 2,587 active positions and the budgeted amounts of 2,800. As I mentioned, diesel fuel is very volatile, and we do work, Tony Trona in procurement and myself and Tony's team work with our diesel fuel provider. And what we do is we utilize futures contracts, and we obviously do not want to pay $5 a gallon for diesel fuel. So what we do is we try to lock in future prices, which are a lot less. We did a lock a couple weeks ago at, I think it was about $3.60 per gallon for July. So we will continue to utilize those and try to curtail year-over-year increases in diesel fuel. But, quite honestly, if those prices remain in effect, for more than a year, it will be very challenging to keep it, under control at the $20 million level. Pension. Now, this particular chart was prepared well in advance of recent events on the markets. So I would expect that we will still see a little bit of a savings in pension going forward. Obviously, with a 20 to 25% downturn in the markets, these will be adjusted in the out years. But I would still anticipate, especially in 2025, that we would probably see a little bit of savings in pension expense. The 26 and 27 numbers, assuming that the market would stay at these levels, would probably, you're going to see an uptick in this pension expense from what's on this current chart. From a gross expensive perspective, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I mean, it's a people-intensive business, so you can't provide transportation without people, as Catherine alluded to. We need people to put the service out there. And so if you look at our budget, it's no different than past years in terms of the majority of it goes for wages and salaries and pension employee benefits, making up, and the two together, almost 75% of the annual budget. From a revenue and subsidy perspective, state operating assistance is about half of the Port Authority's operating budget. Some of the uncertainty and the volatility that are still out there that I've alluded to in terms of we have outstanding or contracts that are going to be expiring with both ATU 85 and IBEW. Diesel fuel I've already alluded to. Utilities, just in the past week, Mike Centra, Tony, and myself have been working on an issue where one of our electricity providers actually went bankrupt, with the potential that it would be like a $700,000 annual impact to the Port Authority's operating budget from the fact that we had contracts in place for future electric rates, and we might have to revert back to market rates. But we are working diligently to try to come up with an alternative. Supply chain is likewise a national issue that the Port Authority is not spared from in terms of, bus parts, rail parts, that sort of thing, and making sure that the contractors we have in place supplying that type of thing are able to deliver, given the supply chain challenges. And we've talked about ridership and passenger revenue. From a fiscal sustainability perspective, and I'm going to jump to the next charts. I think it's the more illustrative of the next 4 to 5 years. But so what we've done is we've overlaid that $322 million of federal stimulus that we have remaining. In addition, we do have operating reserves of about $150 million. And we've taken some assumptions in terms of how passenger revenue we think will bounce back over the next 5 years. And on a very conservative approach, we feel confident that for the next through 2026, that financially we are in a position to continue with service at current levels. And then fiscal 27, you can see there would be an issue with unfunded service to a small extent. And I would say that given our history of being able to keep expenses under control, excuse me, that this is a conservative approach that I would think that we would even probably be able to get into 2028 with our track record of keeping expenses in line. So here's the federal stimulus. This depicts what we've used beginning in 2020 and what we're projecting to use going out into fiscal 2026 from both a ARPA, CARES, and CARISA perspective, which are the 3 pots of federal stimulus dollars. And now we'll move on to the capital budget. And likewise, as it was with the operating budget, the Port Authority is benefiting from additional both federal and state capital funding for fiscal 23, which is being used to help support the initiatives in the 23 capital budget. Much as with the operating budget, the state is the largest funder at 56%, the federal government at 42%, and then Allegheny County at 2%. The net expense dollars for the capital budget is $215.246 million. The reason it does say net expense is that we do utilize certain capital dollars for the operating budget. So things like preventive maintenance, vehicle overhaul, which are all permissible dollars to be used to support initiatives in the operating budget. So those are stripped out of that $215.246 million number. 44% of this, the capital budget as it currently stands, will be used for revenue vehicles, 40% for fixed guideway, And then our debt service is a little bit over $18 million and is basically straight lined until 2029 when our debt would be fully paid off. There's the debt service, $18.6 million. And just to refresh everybody's memory, about a year and a half, we did refinance this and with about an annual savings of a little over $3 million a year. In terms of the bus procurement that's included in the capital budget, it's a little bit higher than historical levels. We did not do a bus purchase in fiscal 22. And so we are purchasing 107 articulated buses. 38 of those are clean diesel, 15 battery electric, and then 54 would be dedicated to the BRT project. Moving to BRT, this fiscal 23 budget has $86 million dedicated to the BRT project that would put it at full funding levels so that we could get approval from the federal government on a full funding grant agreement. There are a few other support programs, transit enhancement of 2.7, information technology of $3.3 million. There's $9 million for non-revenue vehicles and shop equipment. And I will say that we're going to have additional meetings between now and June, and we think we'll be able to dedicate probably an additional $8 to $9 million to some other support programs that are currently not in this version of the capital budget. So where do we go from today's meeting? We meet with our folks at ACTC next week, and we will finalize, make adjustments in any issues with the operating and the capital budget that we would present to the board in June. Can I answer any questions?
Committee members, any questions for Pete, for Catherine?
No, I do have a comment. I thought it was a very good presentation, and I appreciate the work that they've put into it. I know it's very difficult this year with all the other variables beyond our normal staffing and other costs. I mean, some of the other things that Pete discussed seem to be, more difficult for them to try to anticipate for future years. So I do appreciate all their work.
I'd echo that. Great job, guys.
I was going to say it's always very thorough, so that's why I don't have any questions, because you guys just explain it so well. So thank
Well,
you.
no, I can't take credit for it, but I do want to thank
it's a team.
my team.
Yep.
So.
Great. Any other questions from board members?
Just a comment for Michelle. I agree. Terrific presentation. Thank you all.
All right, then we'll move on to the review of the April 22 financial statements. Pete?
Oops, sorry, I think okay. So for fiscal 22, hold it, did I might have, I'm sorry. So total operating income for April was 3.7, which was 4.75 million below budget. This was once again due to lower passenger revenue. I should mention that in April, we did see the impact of the 2-week free ride period, which we estimated to be about $855,000. So that was a slight drag on the results for April. Our total operating income was $636 million, less than March, and that was related somewhat to the 2-week free ride program. And the reason why the delay, the free ride was in March, but a lot of the credits were processed in April. So that's why you see the impact on the April financial statements. For the fiscal year, the total operating income is $39 million below budget. And as I've outlined, we are using the ARPA funding to make the Port Authority whole to offset this loss. For the April, from a expense perspective, $3.24 million below budget. Every category other than salary and wages was below budget for the month, and that was due to overtime levels exceeding the budgeted amounts for the month of April. Our total expenses, however, are still well below plan at $38.5 million below. Our subsidies were $2.2 million below for the month of April, and we did invoice the federal government for $6.5 million in ARPA funding during the month of April. Our subsidies for the year, $15.6 million below plan, and that's somewhat expected. We're using less federal stimulus, and VOH and our state operating assistance is below plan, but that will be rectified by June 30th. Year over year, our total income versus last fiscal year is higher by 13.3 million due to the higher increase year over year in passenger revenue, also access revenue, which is seeing us a bounce back in their ridership as well. Our passenger revenue is currently 47% higher than last fiscal year. If we threw in the impact of the 2-week free ride, it would have been about 52% higher than last fiscal year. Our expenses are 4.3 million higher than last fiscal year, with additional expenses and wages and salaries, other expenses, and also access expense. Our 22 subsidy is $9.4 million below last fiscal year, and that should normalize by the end of the fiscal year. We've used $2.5 million less in preventive maintenance, which is some of those capital dollars that I alluded to on the capital budget that are netted out of the capital budget and used for operating purposes. In addition, we've used less federal stimulus funding in 22 than 21, and some of that's related to the bounce back in passenger revenues, and also the fact that we've been able to keep the expenses under budget. So our operating reserves, we began the month of April with $160.8 million in operating reserves. We had cash inflows of approximately $41 million. We had cash outflows for wages and salaries, benefits, materials and supplies, and services of $33.7 million. So we ended the month of April with a little over $168.2 million in operating reserves. And so this is just to highlight some of the great work that our procurement department's been doing with diesel fuel. We're all amateur diesel fuel hedgers now, but so just for the first quarter of the calendar year, we've been able to save approximately $1.5 million in diesel fuel by utilizing that hedge program where we go out and buy futures. So we would have bought these futures, 6 months to sometimes a year in advance of the fact of this drastic increase in diesel fuel prices. So kudos to the purchasing department, and we will continue to try to overlay future contracts into, as best we can, control future diesel fuel prices. Any questions on?
Any questions of the committee or board members? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, that concludes our business for today. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you in June. Thanks.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Smianik, and welcome to the Performance Oversight Committee. So just take a second and adjust your papers and change your seats, whatever you need to do, and then we're going to move forward with a roll call. Okay, our first item of business then is a roll call this morning. So Representative Austin Davis. Are
I'm
you
here,
with us?
Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm here. I may have to jump off at 10 till, but I'm here.
Okay, very good. And Representative Ms. Gorski, good morning.
Good morning. I'm present.
Okay, so that is roll call. Our next item then will be, and any other board members attending, please announce your name for the record.
Ann O'Gorick.
Jen Liptak.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Our second item of business then is approval of our minutes of the April 19th, 2022 performance oversight. Does anyone have any changes or corrections, additions to the minutes? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
All right, could I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Great, minutes are approved. Moving forward to item number 3 on our agenda. Good morning, Mr. Tony Trona. We are ready for awarding of bids. Good to see you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members. I have five items for your review and recommendation to the full board for approval. All of our bids were publicly advertised and all electronic bid documents were distributed. The first is coach replacement parts for air conditioning. 4 firms accepted our invitation. 3 bids were received for these coach replacement parts used to maintain the authority's coach fleet over a 2-year period. Our recommendation is that a contract be awarded to the low bidder, which was Thermo King of Pittsburgh, in the estimated amount of $677,955. This price represents a 10% increase from the previous contracted price for these items 2 years ago. Number 2, HVAC refrigeration service and maintenance. 3 firms accepted our invitation. 3 bids were received. For HVAC services, it used to repair and maintain the authority's refrigeration equipment over a 3-year period. Recommendation is that a contract be awarded to the low bidder, which was Quality Mechanical Services, an estimated amount of $493,200. This price represents a 24% increase from the previous prices paid for these services 2 years ago. The other bidders under this particular bid was ranged between $545,000 to $734,000. The third, coach radiator assemblies. 1 firm accepted our invitation, and we received 1 bid for these coach radiator assemblies used to maintain our fleet for a 2-year period. The recommendation that the contract be awarded to Gillig LLC, estimated amount of $609,290.50. This price represents a 20% increase from the previous contracted price for these items 3 years ago. Following our policy, we do our single bid survey to find out what the situation was, and Gillig won this award. They are Gillig buses. They're the manufacturer. So anybody else who's going to participate in this bid would have to buy the products from Gillig, so they would not be as competitive. Number 4, coach replacement parts suspension. 4 firms accepted our invitation. 3 bids were received for these suspension parts used in our fleet over a 2-year period. So our recommendation that the contract be awarded to the low responsive bidders, which was Aftermarket Parts Company, estimated amount of $22,000. Gillig LLC, estimated amount $407,678.50. Muncie Reclaim and Supply, estimated amount of $67,752. These prices represent a 15% increase from our previous contracted price for these items 3 years ago. Number 5, tandem axle day cab tractor. This is a state procurement. We're going to piggyback off a state contract. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of General Services, excuse me, has awarded a municipal work vehicle contract to several firms and the authority wishes to make a purchase under the terms and conditions, under the same terms and conditions. This contract is in effect until September of 22. The authority wishes to purchase one tandem axle day cab tractor. This vehicle is used in our way department to safely move heavy equipment around the system. The recommendation is the contract be awarded to Hunter Truck Sales, estimated amount of $152,624.06. The other prices that were on the state schedule ranged from $162,000, $163,000 and above. That concludes my report. Thank you. Any questions?
Any board members have questions for Mr. Trono?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say we can't stop the increases, but I appreciate your efforts to get the most for our money. So thank you, Mr. Trono.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, could I have a motion to move this forward to the full board?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries forward. Thank you, Mr. Trono.
Thank you.
Moving forward to item B on our list. Authorization to extend agreements with a pool of firms for executive search, outplacement, and coaching services. Ms. Inez Colon, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, board members. The resolution before you is that we would like to extend the agreement for one additional year. In February of 2018, Port Authority issued an RFP for those same services on an as-needed basis. And as depicted here, the executive search dealt with identifying and recruiting key personnel for the authority. Outplacement services in those rare instances where we separated with an employee, we provided job searching techniques and also writing resume and assisting them to obtain employment elsewhere, and then coaching services for those individuals that were promoted and needed some assistance in their transition, or for that matter, a key personnel for whatever reason required some additional coaching above and beyond what we offered within the institution. In May 2018, we awarded the contract or the agreement to a pool of vendors to provide said services initially for a 3-year period with 2 option years at the sole discretion of the authority for an amount totaling $272,671. In 2021, again, the authority, at its own discretion, felt that it was a good move to turn around and exercise the first option year to June 27, 2022, and to increase the not to exceed amount to $441,671. At this time, we've evaluated the experience that we've gotten from these vendors, and I need to point out 2 of them are DBEs. We concluded that it is in our best interest to exercise the 2nd year, which would mean that the agreement would expire on June 27, 2023, and that we would not increase the total not to exceed amount. Madam Chair, I respectfully request that you authorize the exercise of the 1 additional year. Are there any
Thank
questions?
you, Ms. Plum. Questions from committee members? Questions from board members? Hearing none, could I have a motion to move this forward to the full board?
So moved.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Second. Very good. Second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries to the full board. Thank you very much, Ms. Cologne. Item C, authorization for settlement of public liability claim. Mr. Mike Setter. Good morning. How are you, Mr. Setter?
I'm good, thank you. Madam Committee Chairwoman and fellow committee members. This resolution would authorize Port Authority to settle a public liability claim. An accident involving a Port Authority bus and a private automobile occurred at approximately 3 p.m. on January 14th, 2017, near the intersection of Penn Avenue and Shady Avenue in the Shadyside area of the city of Pittsburgh. Port Authority's bus was in stop and go traffic when it struck the rear portion of a pickup truck owned and being operated by claimant John Mastriano. The impact caused Mr. Mastriano's truck to collide with another private automobile that was stopped in front of him. Mr. Mastriano's truck was also totaled as a result of the accident. Mr. Mastriano suffered alleged physical injuries as a result of the accident, and he submitted a personal injury.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Representative Davis.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Sorry.
Okay. And also subsequently filed a lawsuit against Port Authority seeking recovery for his alleged injuries. Following mediation, judicial mediation, the parties have agreed, subject to approval by Port Authority's board, to fully and final settle the matter with no admission of guilt or liability by Port Authority for the total settlement amount of $152,500. Subject to any member questions, I would respectfully request that the Performance Oversight Committee recommend this resolution to the full board for approval.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Setra. Any questions from committee members? Hearing none. Any questions from board members for Mr. Setra? Hearing none. Could I have a motion to move this forward to the full board for resolution?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. Motion moves forward to the full board. Thank you very much, Mr. Setra.
Thank you. Thank you.
That concludes our business this morning for the Performance Oversight Committee, and I would like to thank everyone for their participation. And I believe we're moving forward to an additional meeting. I'm not seeing the next slide up.
The
Technology
Committee, yeah, Technology Committee will be beginning. I think we're ready now, correct?
Very good. Yep, we're adjourned.
Call the meeting to order. Yeah, thanks. All right, let's call the Technology Committee meeting to order, and I'd like to start with a roll call for committee members. Representative Ms. Gorski.
I'm present.
Hi, Lori. Thank you. And any other members, can you please identify yourself at this time?
Jeff Letwin.
Ann O'Gorick.
Michelle Smianik.
Okay, thank you everyone for identifying yourself. The first order of business will be the approval of the minutes. We had a Technology Committee meeting on April 19th and a request, a motion, and a second for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
You have a second? I'll second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have two resolutions. They're kind of interrelated. So Jeff, I think you want to handle both of them. Please come forward and present. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, fellow board members, folks in the room here. We do have two resolutions this morning. You're correct. They are interrelated, and we'll take them one at a time. So the first one is an authorization to amend an agreement with Hbac for our fare box warranty services. Our fare boxes are located on all of our vehicles, both rail and bus, and within our fare booths. I will note that these are getting a little bit long in the tooth here. They're at a good 10 years old, so we use this warranty very extensively. The original contract for this particular warranty was in 2019 for 3 years. It included 2 optional 1-year extensions. So at this time, we're requesting the board and the committee to review the first 1-year extension of this, and it is would take us through May 31st of 2023. It would add an amount for this coming year of $959,400 for a total not to exceed of $3,622,500 over the life of the contract. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, I'd respectfully request that this be taken to the full board.
Thank you, Mr. Devlin. Are there any questions from committee or board members? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion for approval,
So moved.
and I will second. All
Second.
those, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I know this fare box issue is something we've been continuing to review, and I appreciate you guys coming forth each year. I mean, we have to warrant them, so, you know, this is important. But I know we're still trying to figure out what's the next step for this entire system. So thank you, Jeff. You want to come on to the next one, please? Move on, please.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. So the second one is a secondary contract for our non-fare box equipment and software maintenance. This one includes our ticket vending machines, sales outlet terminals, and Giant Eagle and Goodwills, the back office software that runs behind it, and the web services that folks are able to use. So this original contract was from 2017 for 5 years, which also includes 2 optional 1-year extensions. So we're requesting the first 1-year extension on this contract, which would carry us through June 30th of 2023. For this coming year, it would be $1,978,034, and it would raise the total not to exceed on this 5-year contract to $12,378,034. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, I'd respectfully request that this be taken to the full board.
Okay, thank you. Any members or board members have any questions at this time?
No.
Seeing none, I'll take a motion for approval, please.
So moved.
And I will second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I don't think we have anything else today, Jeff, do we, right? Nope.
We do not. That's a wrap.
See how that's me. Everyone likes Jen. I close it out, quick meeting. I do appreciate the site in Bachman is it's proprietary. We need to make sure it's maintained. We need to make sure it's warranted. So these are important resolutions to be brought forth to the board. So I do thank you for doing that. There's no other business before the board. Committee meeting today. I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And second, so we will adjourn the meeting for today, and that will adjourn all committee meetings for today. I thank everyone for their participation on behalf of myself and the other board members, and I hope everyone has a good day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.